And away we go. Oh, well, let me just check that you can all see this. Can you see my first slide there? Needs-focused teaching, web class, how to have students listen to you, respect you, and follow your instructions. Just type yes if you can see that. Great stuff. Okay. Hi, everyone. This is Rob Plevin from Needs-Focused Teaching. Welcome to tonight's session. As you can see, the title is Classroom Management in 7 Days. More specifically, how to have students listen to you, respect you, and follow your instructions. Now, I'm going to do my utmost to make this as useful and as practical for you as possible. But before we go any further, I want to clarify who this is for, because I want you to be able to click away and save yourself time if it's not for you. I do not want you to leave, obviously, but equally, I don't want to waste your time. So this session is for teachers who are experienced or newly qualified, or student teachers, or teaching assistants, so basically anyone who's involved in education who has become jaded and at risk of burning out due to the pressure of workload and unrelenting behaviour issues. Those who want to learn a system to prevent and redirect incidents of disruption and inappropriate behaviour so that you've got the freedom to teach and help your students learn. You want to have that sense of cool, calm confidence when you walk into any classroom rather than a feeling of dread in the pit of your stomach. You'd like to be able to make a fresh start with difficult groups and put an end to entrenched behaviour patterns. You want to finish the day feeling positive and energised. Wouldn't that be nice, instead of feeling drained and weary? And you want respect from your toughest students, even if that seems ridiculous right now. Now, I know that if you're a new teacher or if you've been struggling for a long time, all of that or any of that might seem totally unattainable. But believe me, the more you pay attention to what I'm telling you tonight, the more you'll realise that this is totally feasible and doable. Now, I want to make it clear, what I'm going to teach you tonight is super simple. This is something you can put into operation straight away, and it's something you can use at the start of next term or the start of your next teaching year to start over with any group. It's a system you can use to hit the ground running, knowing that your classroom management problems are going to be sorted out, whether that is next week, next lesson, next month, next year, or for the rest of your teaching career. You've got this in the bag once you learn it. So my promise to you is that in the next 60 minutes, actually it's probably going to be more like 70 minutes, maybe even 75 minutes, but we'll do our best to squeeze it in. I promise that if you stick with me, I'm going to give you this simple, practical plan for classroom management success in 7 days or less. And that's without you having to give out loads of threats or detentions, and without fights and arguments. Even if you're at your wit's end and you've tried everything that's that you know of and it's still not worked. When I first learned most of these strategies, my ability to handle tough students changed literally overnight, and I've since helped thousands of teachers to experience the same positive, rapid changes very, very quickly. So it can happen for you as well. Now, what I want to promise you is that I'm going to do everything I can to make this really helpful, really practical. And even if the main content doesn't solve all your classroom management nightmares, at the end I'm going to do some Q&A, so I'll answer some questions, and I'm also going to point you in the direction of some additional resources. Basically, I'm going to make you an offer for a package at the end of this webinar. I'm going to give you loads of free content. I'm going to give you some really useful practical tips and strategies, but at the end I'm also going to make an offer for one of my programs that I've put together specially for people who are on these calls. It doesn't appear anywhere else on my website. This is just a special deal for people who commit time to actually listening to this introduction to my system. So can I ask you, is that okay? I don't want to just spring that on you without giving you a little bit of advance warning. So is it okay for me to tell you about a program at the end? Okay, I've got yeses coming in already. That's great. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. So for now, just set your thoughts and beliefs as to what you think is possible on one side, and know that I'm here to help you as much as I can as we go through a few house rules. Now, for this to work, you've got to actually like kids. You really have to like young people, and you've got to care deeply about their success. Some people come into teaching, I believe, with some of the wrong motivations, and they expect to still be able to get on with kids and manage them and help them succeed, when really their welfare is secondary to them actually just paying their mortgage or having a job with lots of holidays. Yes, those people do exist. Now, if you're one of those, and I doubt very much that you are because you wouldn't be giving your time up, then this probably isn't the webinar for you. You have to actually like and care about young people. You've also got to be willing to do your best to overcome challenges. This isn't for people who just want to take a magic pill and have everything sort itself out. This might it might require a change in your beliefs, in your focus, and in your attitude. So again, if you're not up for doing that, it's probably best you find somewhere else, because I only work with people who are action takers. So if you're up for that, you need to be ready for learning. Close down all your tabs, get a pen and paper ready, because you probably want to take notes. Put your phone away or switch it to airplane mode, and let's go. So let's quickly check in with you, see where you're at. Does this sound like you? Now, I'll read through them, but you can probably skim over them quite quickly. And as you do so, just type in the box any of those numbers which relate to you. Maybe one of them relates to you more than any of the others, or perhaps it's all of them, I don't know. But let's just see where people are at. Do you fear you're not cut out for this, the teaching lark, and will never be able to control or succeed with some groups? Do you think you'll never ever get there? Is it just beyond reach? Do you have a sense of real, palpable dread before teaching some groups? You know, those groups that you're afraid you're just not going to be able to contain them or control them, and they're going to walk all over you and embarrass you and make you look a fool, or make you cry, you know, or just bring you to your knees? Are you spending too much time stressing out and worrying about how to cope with behavior? Is it something you're actually complaining about all your waking hours? Are you getting your friends down and your family down by just moaning about this all the time? Is it eating into your social life and your private life? Number 4, are you fed up with not being able to help the kids that want to learn because of disruption and bad behaviour? Number 5, do you worry what other members of staff and senior managers think of your inability to manage student behaviour? Is that a concern for you? And finally, number 6, do you feel you've already tried everything and nothing works? Okay, what have we got? Let me have a look. So number 4 is always a biggie. We really want to help our kids. That's why we're going to teaching, and we're not able to do it because we're just spending so much time putting out fires. So number 4 is huge for people. Number 1 is a big one. Fear that you're not cut out for this, particularly for new teachers, student teachers. It's like, what? This is what I'm expected to do. I'll never be able to do this. Number 2, yes, that sense of dread before certain groups. Definitely, that's always a big one for people. We've got number 5 for some people. Again, that one comes up a lot. In fact, all of these come up a lot, and some of you have put all of them. So I've got a great responsive group here with lots and lots and lots of answers coming through. Thank you so much. But generally, we're looking at, if I was to pick 3, I would say 1, 2, and 4 are the ones, and possibly 5 or 6 is coming. Yes. Okay. So all of them. Great stuff. Thank you for your answers. Well, doesn't matter which of those you've ticked or all of them. If any of those are true, I've got good news for you, because none of those are actually the real problem. They're just symptoms. The real problem has got nothing to actually do with those things. The real problem and the solution is just that you're not consistently focusing on a few elements of successful classroom management. So all those things are just symptoms, obviously. The real problem is not those. The real problem comes before that. The real problem is that you're just not doing what actually works. And you're probably not doing that because you don't know what that is. It's obvious you wouldn't be here. So I totally understand it. I totally get it, because that's where we all get stuck. Now, the great thing is, when you do just focus on these few key elements that I'm going to talk about, you're going to start feeling in complete control. You're going to start developing a deep sense of confidence. And this is where everything starts to change, because when you start to get this sense of confidence, that's going to cause an immediate change in the way the students respond to you. This all starts with you. When you change, they will change. We're often told to focus on the students in terms of what we do to them. When they do this, we need to do this. When they do that, we need to do that. We're always looking for strategies for things to do with, for, or to the children in order to create the results. But in actual fact, if we focus on ourselves, everything else will look after itself. It all starts with us. Now, when you do it, you're no longer going to feel that sense of worry or dread before your tough groups, because the students are already going to be on your side. Why would you feel worried? Why would you feel that palpable dread going into a classroom when you already know they're on your side? And if they're not, you'll know how to put that right. And you're going to start looking forward to your teaching day. You're going to feel happier, you're going to feel less stressed, more confident, and more able to be creative in your teaching. You're going to be more able to teach those kids that actually want to learn. And actually what you're going to find is that they all want to learn. Once you start getting them on side, once you start being able to work with them, it's not just the eager learners that want to learn, it's these disruptive ones. They're just, a lot of them are demotivated because they're either fearful that they're going to fail. They've just, it's become a habit for them to fail. They've always been told that they're not very good, so they've switched off. Or they're disrupting for other reasons, which we'll come to in a moment. So, let me quickly take a moment to tell you a little bit about me, because I need you to trust me enough to really listen and understand what I'm trying to tell you. So I need to illustrate some of the credibility here and build some trust. I'm not saying any of this to brag in any way, shape or form. It's purely because I need you to trust me. I need you to have faith in this in order to go ahead with it, because it does require a little change in attitudes and beliefs to a certain extent. So who am I? Well, for the last 10 years or so, having retired from being a deputy head at a special school for young children with behaviour problems, I've been training teachers in classroom management and student engagement. My videos, my digital resources, books and everything else have been viewed and downloaded millions, literally millions of times. 3 of my books have reached bestseller status, and my courses, both online and offline in person, have been attended by thousands of teachers, well, tens of thousands of teachers all over the world. Now, they all feature some of the techniques and overall methodology that I'm going to be sharing with you today. So I basically specialize in helping teachers build a new teaching approach for themselves, which focuses on a framework of care and support, and which actually rapidly and radically changes everything for them and the teachers and the students that they're working with. Now, obviously, it's not all about work. Very quickly, I'm basically an ordinary person. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I've got kids, I've got a sister, I have hobbies, I love going in the outdoors. I'm fiercely opposed to little outs, that really gets me down. I'm also an eternal optimist. I love looking for the opportunities in problems, and I like to have fun. That's actually me playing the rear end of a pantomime horse about 5 weeks ago at a party in our village, because my wife thought that was a suitable role for me that night. I obviously care passionately about teaching and young people, and that's why we're all here tonight, because we all do. And I really, like you, used to struggle with classroom management. I used to really struggle with classroom management. In fact, let me tell you how I came about these radical transformations. Because when I first started teaching, as I say, I was really struggling with classroom management. I really wasn't that good. I had that palpable dread with some groups. I used to go home in the evening frustrated that I was losing the battle. I was embarrassed that I couldn't keep students under control. I couldn't teach the kids that wanted to learn. I couldn't get the ones that didn't want to learn on side. I tried being nice to them. I tried being nasty, and none of it worked. I felt like a total failure. I felt like I was letting my family down. I'd let myself down. I borrowed money to become a teacher, and I just felt like at any moment I was going to have to give it up. So I had 2 basic strategies. I used to shout at the kids, and if that didn't work, I used to send them out to a senior teacher. And that basically was my advice. It wasn't until I'd sent out a lot of students during one lesson to a senior teacher that the deputy head came up to me and said, "Rob, you can't carry on like this. You can't just send students out of lessons." And she gave me a bit of advice on giving consequences, which I'll tell you about towards the end when we get to that section, which was the start of things changing for me. I won't say it changed everything, because it took that came in a short, sharp burst in a moment, which I'll tell you about. But yeah, it certainly made a big difference in terms of consequences. So during that time, I tried all the strategies I could find in books. I listened to advice from colleagues, and I tried everything, but it all seemed to be either conflicting advice, or it was just a bit here and a bit there, with no real complete rounded system. Nobody seemed to have the answer, and it used to really frustrate me. I was totally confused, because what would work one day wouldn't work the next day. I'd go home feeling exhausted and weary. And then I'd go in and I'd have a good day, and I'd go home thinking, yes, I've cracked it. And then the next day, the kids would be totally out of control again and unresponsive. So nothing seemed to work for any length of time. Then, after a couple of years, I decided it was make or break for me. I was literally on the verge of giving up. But I thought, what I'll do is I'll go to the lower end of the spectrum. And I went to work in a pupil referral unit in the northeast of England. And this was a really rough unit. This is a unit where young people go if they're at risk of being thrown out of mainstream school, or they have in fact been thrown out of mainstream school for behaviour. And the behaviour here was unlike anything I'd seen other than on documentaries. The kids were literally running the place, you know. They were just wild. They were on the roof throwing stuff through the skylights. They were breaking windows. They were scratching the cars in the car park. They were punching members of staff. It was just a free-for-all, and it was quite scary, to be quite honest, but it was also incredibly exciting for me because it was the launch pad for my career, really. I got on quite well with the kids, but I had no idea how to manage them. However, this place was in special measures, which meant that they were throwing a lot of money out for training and support. And we had some very talented psychologists and behaviour specialists working with the team, the teaching team, and helping us to develop a system. And as a result of all that support, we managed a dramatic turnaround in the school, and we took it from the brink of closure to becoming a flagship centre and a widely regarded example of excellent specialist provision. And it literally took, well, once we got the thing in place, it literally took a few weeks. I mean, the changes were radical and they were rapid. So basically, I stayed on at the unit for about 8 years, and this became a really intense period of learning and development for me. And I started then to get invites to run staff training sessions, and then I put booklets together, and it was during that period that I had my big breakthrough. While I was doing a bit of research for a course I was running, I came across Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I realised that behaviour problems we see in the classroom and in school and in young people, indeed in everyone, are almost always the result of unmet needs. Now, this made total sense to me. We are all motivated by our unmet needs. Our behaviour is governed and driven by our need to satisfy these needs. So on a basic level, for example, if we're hungry, we have a need for food and we go and make a sandwich. And this same process is at play when we move up into the realm of feelings and emotions and psychological needs. So we all have a need for acknowledgement, for example, to a greater or lesser extent. And this motivates us to work hard and to accomplish things. Now, psychologists give long lists of psychological needs which motivate our behaviour. This is well-known theory. But I found that in the case of teaching and classroom management in particular, I could group these needs into just 3 broad groups: belonging, empowerment, and fun. And this became the basis of my needs-focused approach. Now, if you think about it, students have a need to feel empowered. They need to feel a sense of autonomy. They need some choice in what they're doing. They need to feel they've got an element of control, otherwise they feel trapped and persecuted. They need to feel that their efforts have been noticed and acknowledged. So if we don't empower them in the classroom, they will seek to get that need satisfied in inappropriate ways. And that's why they start acting up. That's why they might argue with the teacher or opt out of activities. They're empowering themselves. The same for fun. We've got this need for variety, excitement, interest. And if we don't provide stimulating activities in lessons, students will find their own inappropriate ways of having fun, chatting, messing around, disrupting. All those things that we find so annoying and frustrating are basically just trying to satisfy their need for fun. And finally, belonging. We've all got this need to feel connected to something greater than ourselves. It's why gangs and friendship groups are so important. So if we don't provide the means to help our students have a sense of class community and camaraderie, if we don't make them feel part of a group in the classroom, and if we don't make a priority of building relationships with our students, then they're always going to feel like outsiders. And that's probably why they seem reluctant to get involved, not so much because they don't want to join in, but because they don't feel able to break into that circle. So we all like to feel connected, and I feel this is probably one of the most important of the 3 needs. Now, once I started to apply everything I'd learned as part of a consistent strategy in terms of focusing on satisfying these needs, everything suddenly clicked into place. It all came together. I found myself going into school with this quiet confidence because I just knew I could handle any student and any group. Once I put this foundation of meeting these needs in order to prevent problems, and also making sure that I didn't compromise those needs when I was dealing with problems, the students just seemed to be so much more responsive. Other staff members began to notice. My manager noticed, and I was offered a promotion. Parents would call me up asking for advice. It seemed that suddenly I became the expert because the kids just responded so differently to me, to how they had before. And then, of course, I had a system that I could teach and pass on to other people. And when they did, or when I did give it to them, they saw rapid improvements in their teaching too. So before long, I was teaching student teachers in universities. This was from Sheffield Hallam University. I also worked with most of the universities around the country, actually, and then I started doing it abroad, etc., etc. Okay, just to give you some credibility behind these. So there are 7 key elements that form part of this needs-focused system, and they lead to less stress, better results, more respect, fewer behaviour problems, and more responsive students. And pay attention, because although you've heard of these almost certainly as individual strategies, it's the application of them combined in a consistent manner in this system which makes all the difference, together with one extra aspect which may well be the complete opposite to what you've been doing in the past and what you've been advised to do. Okay, so let's start with the first. Let me just check, is everyone okay so far? Are you all hearing me okay? Can you see everything? Do you get the feeling that that makes sense? Are you okay with that idea of satisfying needs? Does that make sense to you? Because that's our foundation, we've got to get this. Now, on a previous session, somebody said, can you just get to the strategies? Can you just get to the end bit where you're actually dealing with them? Well, no, because in order to make the strategies work, you've got to have this stuff in place first. You need to have this general idea of why we're doing this. It's essential. So there's a little bit of theory, and then we'll do some practical, we'll look at practical strategies as well. Great stuff, everyone's with me. Right, first key strategy is vigilance. So what you miss persists. What you don't challenge, you see more of. Now, I know you can't notice everything that happens, and sometimes we avoid challenging some students because of the backlash or the reaction it'll cause. But what you've got to bear in mind here, this is crucial, any act of misbehaviour which goes either unnoticed or unchallenged is going to come back to bite you. Now, I remember tactically ignoring the fact that one of the girls in my class I was teaching had a neatly concealed headphone in one ear. Now, she knew I'd seen it, and I knew I'd seen it, but I also knew that asking her to remove it or telling her to remove it was going to result in a huge tantrum, because she was renowned for huge tantrums, right? She could give tantrums that would scare anyone. So I let it slide. Now, the next lesson, 3 of her friends had earphones in, and you can guess what happened when I challenged them. It was like World War III. That's not fair. You let Chantel get away with it yesterday. Why are you picking on us when you let her off? You're no good, you. It was all that kind of stuff. And I had this huge swathe of behaviour to deal with. I mean, it was just madness, just because I'd let one person off. So often we take the shortcut, but we create a rod for our own backs. Vigilance is about being everywhere in the classroom. Go to the back of the room where the likely lads hang out. Direct your lesson from a different corner of the room. Give support to every student in every area of the room. Just hang around in any corner of the room. Just don't stand behind your desk wringing your hands with your legs crossed, scared to get up and walk around, because that's when the problems develop. And if we don't tackle them when they're embryonic, then they start to escalate, they start to grow, they start to magnify. And when they do that, they become very difficult to control. So do yourself a favor, be vigilant, spot the problem before it even happens, and then do something about it. So for example, if a kid comes into the classroom and doesn't say hello to you, doesn't respond when you ask them a question, how is everything? They just grunt at you. That's a little bit of a warning sign that something's wrong with that student. And if you just ignore them, it's probably going to bubble up and develop into something else. So what I would do in that regard is I would maybe pull them aside once everyone else is settled and working, and just very calmly ask if everything's okay, and try and go in a little bit further that way, or be very wary of giving extra support to that student. Be on the lookout for any chance that that student needs extra support. So as well as vigilance and looking for things going wrong, I think another key part of this is looking for things that are going right, because most struggling teachers tend to focus on what's going wrong. And that one simple fact means they create a very negative, punitive environment. They spend their time correcting students and telling them off. And I'll tell you now, if you to reverse this and just put more effort into noticing and acknowledging examples of good behavior, you'll immediately start to see a huge change in your classroom, because you're not creating that punitive, negative environment. You're creating a more open, relaxed environment when you're looking for the positives. So let's go on to a way of upholding a positive environment. This is our key element number 2. Just have a think about this for a second. In which environment are students more likely to misbehave? One which creates negative feelings and emotions, one in which they feel perhaps a little bit isolated or criticized or frustrated, or one where they feel happy, successful, and connected. Now, you don't need to put anything in the chat box, because you'd have to be an idiot to pick a classroom where they feel isolated, criticized, and frustrated as one where they're going to behave well. You know, our feelings, our emotions drive our behavior. So if you're creating this negative, punitive environment where you are on the lookout constantly for things going wrong, or for the likely lad who always causes the problems, and you're ready to jump on them, then you're going to see more problems. What you focus on, you tend to see more of. So focus on the positive stuff. Now, it's obvious. Positive environment is really important if you want to see fewer problems. How do we create that positive environment? Well, in my needs-focused system, I go through loads of ways to do this, but let me mention just one of them, and that is praise and encouragement, because this is something you can do very quickly. And it's also one of the quickest ways to get students on your side, basically in an instant if it's done right. So to those of you who believe change takes lots of time, and those of you who think that this stuff is really difficult, takes ages to learn, and only works for certain kids, believe me, this changes everything rapidly. I've seen it work with really hard kids, unteachable kids, kids who've abused staff and been abused themselves. Nobody is immune to the power of this when it's done right. I'm going to tell you a really quick story about the power of praise. I'm paraphrasing this, I'm making it really quick, okay, but you'll hopefully get the gist of it. About 10 years ago, my business nearly did grind to a halt, because I went through a really difficult patch. My mother had Alzheimer's, my dad had cancer, my son had gone very wayward. I was a single parent at the time, and I found myself having to spend so much time with my family trying to sort out problems that my business was basically going down the drain pipe. I had lots of admin and stuff to deal with. I was a one-man band. I wasn't very good at running all that side of things. And my business basically consisted of an online side and then me driving up and down the motorway, delivering training to schools and colleges. It was really, really tiring. And I decided at one point there that I had to either focus on the business or focus on my family. Now, obviously, I focused on my family because my mother meant everything to me, and bless her, she was basically going mad and couldn't look after herself. It was an awful, awful situation. But equally, stopping my business was like cutting my arm off, because I'd worked at this so much. It was my baby, and it was everything to me. But anyway, cut a long story short, I had to close the business down. I had to write to all my subscribers who were paying me a monthly subscription and say, look, I can't keep going with the business. This is the situation. And I highlighted the various issues that I was facing. And I stopped the business. Now, there's an old saying that if you haven't got money coming in, you're about 3 months off the gutter. And I'll tell you now, having experienced it, it's not far wrong, because once I stopped the business, I could no longer afford the car payments, the mortgage, well, rent actually, the mortgage on my mother's house, because she obviously was in dire straits as well financially. All the payments started grinding to a halt. And so people started wanting their money and started sending me collection letters, such as the electricity was going to be cut off, the gas, the car was going to be repossessed, the house was going to be repossessed, etc., etc. Now, I'm not sharing this story for sympathy. What I want to tell you is this. Not one of those letters which threatened something made an iota of difference to me at that time, because I was already so low, I really didn't care about anything else or anyone else doing anything nasty to me. They couldn't hurt me at all. Now, this is a lot like your students feel, your particularly bad students feel when you give them a detention, or you shout at them, or you give them any sort of punitive or negative treatment. They've had a lot of that in their lives, some of these kids. And so when you just lump a little bit more on them, it doesn't really matter to them. It's certainly not going to make a positive difference, just as it didn't to me. So I just thought, well, take the car, you can have it. I really couldn't care less. Cut the electricity off. I really couldn't care less. I've got bigger fish in the fire, thank you very much. I've got bigger things to deal with. My mum is dying. So I was basically getting depressed with all this. But one thing pulled me through. And I'll tell you what it was. It was the letters from my previous subscribers and my friends and members of the family who I hadn't seen for decades, who started sending me letters and gifts and messages saying, in the case of my customers, how wonderful the service had been and how much they appreciated it and how much of a difference it had made to their lives. And could I please put it back on air again? And did I need any help? I even had people offering to come and help me with my mum who I'd never even met. That is what made the difference. It was the positive praise lumped on me by, in some cases, complete strangers, which changed me because it reached my heart. It changed me in the moment. That's what got me back in the game. That's what got me back to work, not the punishment, not the threats. So praise is one of your most powerful strategies, but you've got to get it right. Now, I haven't got time to go through all the details of how to really improve praise and make sure that it hits the spot. But I will give you one quick tip here, and that is to make it descriptive. Throw away those comments like well done, good work, and oh yeah, that's good. Instead, make it personal. Tell them specifically what they've done right and tell them why it was so good. Johnny, you've been wonderful this lesson. You brought all your equipment, you completed the work I set, and you've been helpful to other people. When you behave like this, you make my job easier and much more enjoyable. Thank you. Now, doesn't that sound much better than well done, or even just ignoring it? Because a lot of the time we see Johnny doing the right thing, but because he's always doing the wrong thing normally, we just think, oh, well, about time. Oh, at last you're learning how to behave. I thought you'd have learned that by now at your age. We just disregard it because we expect it. But some of these kids never get any praise. And if you can be the one who notices any slight improvement that they make and acknowledges it and lets them know that you've seen it, and lets them know you believe in them and you believe they can succeed, then you'll start to see changes. Another way of upholding and encouraging the behavior we want to see is routines. Now, some people call these procedures. Let me just quick check. How many of you use routines in your classroom on a daily basis? Who uses routines in lessons on a daily basis? Okay, we've got lots. Rather than raise your hand, if you can type it in the chat box, that would be good. Thanks. Okay, so we've got quite a few coming through. Yes, 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 yes. So we've got yes, no, I don't use them enough, sort of. Okay, so if you're using these every lesson and you're using them several times in a lesson, great stuff, you can do a bit more. If you're not using these at all, please do so, because it completely can automate your classroom. Totally and completely automate your classroom. These can eliminate the need for you to constantly have to repeat instructions. So if you're not using them, start doing so. If you do use them even more. Now, when do most behavior problems occur in a lesson? Don't worry, you don't need to type it in. Basically, we all know it's during transitions and changes and new activities. That's when most of the problems happen, because students are up on their feet, they're doing something different, and suddenly the pressure's off and they've got an excuse to do something wrong, basically. Quick example, let's look at the end of a lesson. This is just one simple transition. Now, some lessons I've witnessed, this is utter chaos. The bell or the buzzer is a signal for a free-for-all. The students jumping out of their seats, shouting and screaming, chucking everything in their bags, brushing stuff onto the floor, and then rushing out the door. Now, these problems occur because students have an excuse to misbehave. What do I mean by that? Well, if you don't tell them specific instructions as to how they do that transition, as to how they behave at each stage of the end of the lesson, then they have an excuse to do something else because you haven't defined what they're expected to do. With a routine in place, all that chaos can be avoided and the excuses are eliminated, just with 3 or 4 simple instructions. Now, wouldn't this make the end of the lesson a lot simpler if 3 minutes before the bell, the teacher says, okay, everyone, it's time for the end of lesson routine. You know what to do. And she points up at the wall where there's a laminated poster with the instructions written on it. End of lesson routine. Put textbooks on the shelf tidily, put equipment back where you got it from, clear your desk, put all rubbish in the bin, sit in silence, facing the front. Now, if a student isn't doing any one of those things at any time, you've got the wonderful response, which is, Johnny, what should you be doing right now? There's no need to start repeating instructions. There's no need to start worrying about what you should be asking them to do and trying to think of consequences for them not doing it. All you've got to do is point at the routine and say, what should you be doing? It's all written there. We've practiced this. You know what to do. On you go. It's non-confrontational. You're not saying, do this, do this, do this. You're not having to shout. Just, Johnny, what should you be doing? Look at the wall. And they get on with it. And it works. And it's brilliant. And it sorts out so many arguments. Just a few simple instructions. Now, how would it be if you had routines for every transition in your lesson? All your hotspots. Everything was explained with a simple set of clear instructions. Let me tell you, it completely automates your classroom. It takes away all the stress of having to repeat instructions all the time. Now, I haven't got time to go through all those routines, but in the system that I'm going to tell you about at the end of this, there's a full set of routines all ready and adaptable for any classroom transition or hotspot, plus a set of detailed instructions as to how you can teach routines to your students so that they actually do what's written. Because a lot of you be saying, well, yeah, what if they don't do that? Well, okay, you need a system in place, and that's all explained. No time for that right now, though. So our next key element is a little bit like routines, and that is clear communication, getting your instructions followed. Now, my personal view is that miscommunication is one of the biggest causes of confrontation in the classroom, and it's actually really easy to avoid. Obviously, a lot of factors involved, but let me just give you a very simple example. Have you ever had the situation where you tell a student to get on with their work and you find 25 minutes later that they haven't done a thing? Hit yes in the box if that is a problem for you. You tell them to get on with their work, get on with your work, and you come back to them and 25 minutes later, they haven't done a thing. Yes, 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 yes. Okay, great. Now, this is because they've got an excuse. You've given them a vague instruction, often, such as, get on with your work. And when you say to them, why haven't you done your work? They're able to use either of 2 very effective responses. Either, well, I didn't hear you. How do you know they didn't hear you? You don't, do you? So you've got an argument on your hands there, and they've got a good excuse. Or they can say, well, I didn't understand you. I didn't know what you meant. How do you know they didn't understand you? You don't, do you? So you've got another argument on your hands. You've created a situation where they've got an excuse, and you're going to get an argument. So they've now got 2 pretty good excuses for wasting 25 minutes. Here's how you get around it. This is just one aspect of clear communication. You give a clear, specific instruction. So instead of get on with your work, I'm going to say, Johnny, in the next 15 minutes, you need to complete questions 1 to 8 on page 35. Now that's pretty clear. He knows exactly what he has to do. But he might come back later and say, well, I didn't understand the questions. So you check for skills. Johnny, you show me how you would do question 1. Now, once he's shown me that he can do question 1 and he has the required skills, I'll then ask him to repeat the instruction. Now, you tell me what I asked you to do, Johnny. So you said, complete these questions 1 to 8 on page 35 in the next 15 minutes. Great stuff. Those 2 excuses have been removed. Okay? Clarity can eliminate a lot of miscommunication and problems in lessons. Now, engaging lesson activities. I've not got time to go into this in any detail at all, really. There are lots of theories on the many different ways to make lessons more appealing to students, raise engagement and get them interested. Basically, I found that a lot of kids that we teach that cause problems, the disruptive ones, they tend to benefit from kinesthetic activities. Another aspect that will really help is cooperative group work. Now, the reason why these 2 things work is because kinesthetic activities give them a hands-on thing. You know, a lot of these kids need to be fiddling and doing stuff and up on the feet or doing things with their hands. So occasional kinesthetic activities can really work well and really help them. It basically means that they start to look forward to your lessons because they're doing activities that give them good feelings. The other is cooperative group work, and that is where they work in small teams, mixed teams of gender and ability rather than friendship groups. They provide each other with support, they get a sense of belonging, they acknowledge each other's work, they help each other, and it's actually quite good fun. So you can see how that one activity meets those three crucial needs. So cooperative group work activities and kinesthetic activities. I haven't got time to go into them in any detail, but what I will give you is one very quick, simple kinesthetic activity, and that is what I call envelope tasks. This is basically where I give them an envelope or a bag, something that creates curiosity, and it's something that they can get their hands on and hold. And it contains resources for the task. So for example, with younger kids, I might be getting them to do a bar chart, and rather than doing a bar chart from a book or copying it into their maths book, they create a physical bar chart. So I'll give them a ruler and a pair of scissors and some coloured graph paper and some coloured pieces of paper that they can cut into strips and a few pens, and then I'll give them a data sheet. And all that comes as a little kit, and they've basically got the instruction that they've got to create a bar chart from the data sheet. Now that's much better than just doing book work. That's something they can grab. Or it could be a load of photos that they've got to put into a sequence, perhaps to explain a geological process. Or it could be sequencing some events in history, or in a retelling a section from a book. So many ways that you can take normal book work and make it into a physical activity. So here's one which is just a simple quiz. This could be, for example, a character description on one card, and then on another card there'd be a photograph or a picture of the character. So you could have a whole batch of these in one envelope, and they've got to sort through them. It's a sorting exercise, and then they've got to match them to each other. Or in my case, it's basically just a quiz. Okay, so I've got a photograph, and then there's a quiz to go with it. Loads of different ways you can do it. Let's do the quiz. Okay, so there's a picture of me as I am in the last few years, and there's a picture of me and the rest of the cast of skeletons from a play called Dracula Spectacular when I was about 11 years old. Which one am I? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. Was it John who was on last night? John, you don't count in this because you already know the answer. Just fill it in the box there. Which letter you think is me? Okay, so we've got Lisa coming up quite a lot. B. Lisa's a girl, obviously. Poor Lisa, if you think she looks like me. We've got I. That's Bruce. We've got H. That's Trevor. It's funny, I remember all these kids, actually. These were all my friends at school. One or two of you have got C. Okay, so indeed, that is me. And if you notice, there is one skeleton there who has got his skeleton on back to front. And of course, it was yours truly. Poor Rob. I was quite confused at school. It explains a lot. Okay, let's move swiftly on. Right. What might it be? Key element number 6. We've gone through a few now. You can't teach effectively without this. You could be in a school, a beautiful building, wonderful resources, the best resources, amazingly supportive staff, fantastic management team, parental support, perfect policies in place. You've got the best reward systems. They have a praise assembly every week in which amazing prizes are often awarded to the students and presented by all the senior members of staff, and the whole school takes part, etc., etc. But if you can't bond with the kids you're teaching, if you can't form relationships with them, teaching them and managing behaviour is going to be a very uphill struggle. Doesn't matter how good the school and support is behind you. Now, on the other hand, you could be teaching in a porter cabin. You could be teaching in a shed with tatty old books from a charity shop. None of the fancy stuff. But if you are able to form bonds and connect with your students and let them see that you care about them, you believe in them, and you're interested in them, then you have a very good chance of successfully teaching them. And you'll almost certainly be able to manage their behavior because they will love you. So the key element is positive relationships. Now, again, I haven't got time to go through this in detail, but let me give you a tip for building crucial teacher-student bonds. If you think of your closest relationships, those with your friends and family, there are 2 things in place. You communicate frequently with them, and you show them that you care about them. That goes for every positive relationship that you've got. You communicate frequently, and those people know you care about them. Now, if you just spend a few minutes thinking how to show students you care about them, and then communicate that to them fairly frequently, you will see a massive difference in how they respond to you. I promised you classroom management success in 7 days or less, but believe me, if you put your time into relationship building, into praise, you will see changes in much less than that. There's a little caveat: if you go in too hard, too fast, you can scare kids off. So a little bit kid gloves with this, judge it softly, softly. Don't go in too hard, running up and giving them a hug. Obviously, you take it a little bit gently, but it's very, very powerful. Why? Well, because students behave better for, respond more positively to, and work harder for someone they know, like, and trust. It's obvious. And also, when you get the ringleaders on your side, if you focus on building relationships with them, you get the whole class on your side because they bring the rest of the kids with you. Now, you might have been saying to yourself, oh, yeah, I've heard all these ideas before. And you might have even tried some of them. You might have tried all of them. But I promise you, if you do it in the way I'm suggesting, consistently and part of this system, your students are going to start responding. I promise you, it works like magic. But there is one thing that makes all the difference, and I call it the secret weapon. This is what makes everything work. It's like the magic key. It's the foundation on which all those key elements rest, and it makes everything else possible. And this is also the bit that's completely opposite to what most struggling teachers are told to do. Some of you have been told, don't smile till Christmas. Stick that in the box, yes, if you've been told, don't smile till Christmas. Have you heard that before? Yes, lots of you. Okay. And have you had any good results with it? Have you had any success with that? No, of course not. Because we're told to show them who's boss. You've got to show that you're in charge. Now, if you go around with that attitude, don't smile till Christmas, you've got to see me as the mean leader. I don't take prisoners. You might get reluctant compliance at best. Well, that's not the way to build real success. If you want your kids to work for you, work for themselves, believe in themselves, do their best, and trust you enough to take risks in the classroom and try to learn, then you've got to have relationships there. I like to think of it as 3 levels of classroom management. There's the strategies at the first bit. Okay, so there's when the students do this, we do that, or we have a strategy in place for this and a strategy in place for that. And in order for those strategies to work best, you need the relationship in place. Obviously, your strategies are going to work better if the kids actually like you and trust you. So, strategies, underneath that we have relationships. But there's a foundation that comes before that. There's something else. It's underneath the relationships. And without it, the rest just doesn't work, because you can't build relationships if you haven't got the right attitude. And the attitude that I suggest you adopt is a caring and supportive attitude. Now, some of you may feel you do this automatically. Why is this so important? Well, simply because it changes you. And remember, I said right at the start, the changes have to start with you. From an attitude of care and support, you start to use different strategies. You start to use considered responses rather than just reactions, rather than just flying off the handle. And when you start treating your students from that attitude of care and support with these more considered supportive strategies, they will respond to you very differently. It all starts with us. You might well be the only teacher in these kids' lives who does that. And believe me, that makes an immediate difference. This is how you can become the teacher they all love and they all respect. So if you've tried various strategies in the past and they haven't worked, this is what is going to make the difference. So how do you change your attitude towards students who are driving you mad? Well, there's one little tip I can give you. There are a load of stories I could tell you, but unfortunately not got time now. We're starting to run low on time. What I will say is this: see them as students with problems rather than problem students. So that kid who's kicking off, there's a reason for them kicking off. That kid who's got his hood up when he comes into class and won't take his coat off, it's not just pure belligerence. There's a reason for that. There's a reason why they're opting out of the work. Often they opt out of work because they're scared stiff of looking a fool. They're sick of failing and they're fed up of always being wrong. It might just be that they lost their favourite pencil this morning. To us, it's just a bloody pencil. But to them, that was a pencil that their dad gave them, and they only see their dad once a month. There's always a reason for the behaviour. They maybe fell out with a friend on the way to school, or a girlfriend, or the mum might have been in an accident, or the big sister might have had a baby and it's thrown the family into turmoil. Or they never had breakfast this morning, or they were up watching video games until 3 o'clock because nobody gives a monkeys about them. There are reasons for their behaviour. And if you can be the one who is caring and supportive, as well as firm and fair and everything else with firm boundaries, I'm not talking about letting them off, then you can make a huge difference in their lives and they'll make a huge difference in yours. Here's a quick case study. This is from Brad. Brad initially heard about me on YouTube, and he wrote me 2 letters. The first one explained a little bit more about how he didn't believe my system would work. He said, look, I just thought it was too mushy and too softly, and I just thought, well, there's no way this is going to make a difference with the kids. Then he wrote me this one. He said, you saved my life and career. I was polishing the print off my resignation letter when I stumbled across your videos earlier this year. I thought to myself, all right, there's no way any of that will work in reality, but I'm glad to have been proved wrong. Not only was it super simple to implement with my class from the Black Lagoon of behaviour misfits, within just a few days, I had 0 issues. Folks in the special ed department were stunned. I was infinitely impressed with my students, myself, and Rob's methodology. Sometimes the best answer is a simple one. The students and I were in a groove in no time, and a few parents popped out of the woodwork to thank me for inspiring their children. Some of them even say that they love me now. Isn't that wonderful? No wonder I was about to quit. I had not actually taught and enjoyed it until very recently. Wow, I cannot believe I was going to let myself get in the way of such a wondrous career. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, thank you, Brad, because that meant a lot to me. You know, it's amazing how much praise impacts on us. I almost have tears in my eyes when I'm reading it. I've read it a lot, so it's worn off a little bit. But when I get letters of praise, when I get thanks sent to me, when I get really good feedback, it just makes me feel so good. And that's how your kids feel when you can do praise right. Now, I didn't go into it in much detail here, obviously, but I'll tell you a little bit more about it in the needs focused system. But basically, praise is an amazing way to get kids on side. So let's get to the last bit, which is considered responses. We're about 50 minutes right now. So, or is it 55 minutes? So I've got about 15 minutes at most left. So I said about 70 minutes. That's good if I can keep to that, actually. That's good for me because I normally go miles over. Okay, so considered responses, the last of our elements. All those lights and dials and readouts represent the various attributes and processes involved in keeping a plane up in the air. And whenever something goes wrong, the air pressure drops or the altitude drops or the engine starts playing up, there's a procedure to follow to sort the problem out and restore normal operations. Now, just like a pilot has a set of emergency procedures and responses to follow as soon as a warning light goes on, you need considered, planned responses for all the behaviour your students display or when things start to go wrong in the classroom. Otherwise, what happens? You get that horrible feeling where you see it starting to go wrong and you're at a loss as to what to do. Have you had that feeling where you're confronted by a fight or a student doing something wrong and you just don't know what to do, so you start to panic? Oh my God, what if people hear outside the classroom? It's just gone mad in here. What if people see that I can't actually control these kids? Now, I've got a load of information on specific responses to specific problems, but there is a basic set of guidelines which is the back of most of them. And it's basically this. Vigilant, we've covered that. Address problems early. Seek to prevent the problems from actually happening. Get them when they're in their embryonic form. That's when it's easiest for you. So being vigilant, addressing them early. Always with an attitude of care and support. No big guns blaring. Start positive. Now, a quick example. What does that mean by start positive? Well, if you just read the riot act or you start shouting at kids and having a go at them, they start to switch off. Many of them, as I've said, just hear nothing but negativity. So it just goes in one ear and out the other. It doesn't even register. I'll give you the example of, let's say, Johnny's handing his work in at the end of the lesson and he's supposed to have done 30 questions and he's done 1 question. Now, if I wasn't starting positive, my response might be something like, "You've done 1 question, Johnny. What have you been playing at for the last 3 hours? What have you been doing?" I'm just straight away with a negative and he just shuts down. What I mean by start positive is this. Let's have a look, Johnny. Oh, well, you got 1. That's a good start, mate. And you know what? You've got it right as well. So let's build on this. Now, what are the issues? Why didn't we get to question 2? Once we've started positive, they will listen. And from there, you can address the problem. Now, obviously, there are some issues, vandalism and fighting and abuse and things like that, where you've just got to go straight in and you deal with the problem with consequences. But in many ways, when we're dealing with behavior, we've got a little bit of time to start with positive and then build from there. Also, you need a hierarchy of consequences in place. Now, the key thing that lady told me, that deputy head teacher, right at the start when I was telling you, she gave me a piece of wonderful advice that stopped me from sending kids out of the classroom every lesson, was this: don't use your big guns straight away. Every lesson, I would shout my head off, and if that didn't work, I would send them out the class. I had nothing else to do if I'd already shouted my head off. I had no hierarchy of responses or consequences. So what else do I do? I've used my big gun already, my big voice. I've yelled at the top of my voice. What do I do next? And the kids were just laughing at me because I was completely out of control. I had no control over them whatsoever. So let's say Johnny's talking in class. Rather than shouting my head off at him and then sending him out the classroom, I start small. Johnny, if you carry on talking, I'm going to move you to this seat at the front next to my desk. It's your choice. The onus is on him, and I've given him a warning. Now, if he carries on talking, I can then move him to the seat at the front. And that doesn't have to be my big gun. I can basically say then, Johnny, you don't have to sit there for the rest of the lesson if you can work quietly. I'm going to set a timer for 10 minutes. Now, if you can work quietly for 10 minutes, I will let you go back to your seat at the back of the room. Now, if he doesn't and he starts messing around and he's talking, I then move up to my next consequence, which might be something like, right, Johnny, you're staying behind after the lesson for 2 minutes, or you're missing 10 minutes of break, or you're going to do X, Y, Z. You have a hierarchy of consequences in place. Now, if you get confused with consequences, and I tell you, I really did when I first started this, I found this area really confusing. I've got something in the package that I'm going to tell you about in a moment, which really sorts this out. It explains consequences from start to finish. But that's basically it. Vigilant, get in early, caring, supportive attitude, start positive where possible, and have a hierarchy of consequences at your disposal. So let's move on. Does this work? Well, I've showed you a few testimonials, but let me give you another one. This is from Erin. These are old ones from my website, actually. But I never saw 15-year-olds move so fast to come back to order. No repeating myself, no prodding. I've seen miracles occur. That was from Dawn. So yeah, it does. And it works really, really well. What I want to ask you now is a quick question. We're coming to the end of this. I wanted to give you the foundations of the system that made such a difference for me in teaching and has made such a difference for thousands of teachers around the world that I've since taught. So let me ask you the question. Has your time today been well spent? Let me know with a yes or a no. Did you get something useful from this? Even if it was only focus on your attitude, relationships, and praise. Great stuff. Wonderful. Amazing, says King. Wonderful. Thank you so much. I had a question there. Ask that at the end, please. I don't know who it was. It said something about what do I do if I can't give detention? Do you know what? For the first 5 years of my career, I never gave one detention. I just don't believe in it. There's something different that you can do to detention. So ask that one at the end. I'll tell you a little bit about it at the end when we go to Q&A. So my next question is, do you want some extra help? Would you like some extra help? No, that's not the right slide. Would you like some extra help? Hit a yes. This is where I tell you about the program. It'll take me about 5-7 minutes to go through this. So hit a yes if you would like to know about this wonderful program that I've put together. Now, basically, I've put together a bundle not available anywhere else on my website. And this is for people who are committed and who have given their time to be on this call. It's not available anywhere else. It's just for you being on these calls. Because I know that people who give up their time are interested in learning and taking action. And they're the type of teachers that I work with. Honestly, I'm not really interested in people who just grumble and complain, because I think there are always solutions to be found. And if you want to just sit and grumble, then you're going to get nowhere. So this is for people who have sat in on this call and are prepared to give their time. I'm prepared to help. So if you want help, extra help, pin your ears back, open your eyes, turn your phones off, and get ready, because this is a really good deal. Right, a lot of these are new products, fairly new training programs. The process packs, I ran them last year, kind of a synthesis of old stuff that really, really worked, and I wanted to put things more into a system for people. So let me go through each of the things that you get. Believe me, this is everything in detail that we've done today. It's like I've just scratched the surface of it. This is all the bits that you need to make that system work. So basically you get the prevention process. Now don't worry about the prices of these where it says the value. You'll see that mounting up. These prices are what people have actually paid in the past. I ran these programs live and people paid those prices, but when they're recordings, then I tend to sell them a lot lower. And what I've put together for you is a pack of everything at a huge discount, basically. So you get the prevention process. And that is basically where we talk about these 7 elements in place to prevent the problems. This is setting your foundation. So it's where you build the relationships and how you do it. It's where you set up homeschool partnerships. It's how you transform your students' feelings and behavior so that you get them looking forward to coming into your classroom. Changes to your room layout. It's basically how you prevent problems from happening. It's about getting that foundation of being prepared in place. That's where your confidence comes from, basically, and it's a big reduction in behavior problems. So you get access to the video training for life. There's a lot of bonus resources with each of these packs, actually. There's a certificate of attendance, you get the PowerPoint slides, and you get access to all the live reruns. Every time I do these live, you can just join in free of charge, and you can ask questions and things. So it's like having live Q&A as well, a few times. Well, sometimes it's a few times a month or less than that, depending on when I'm doing them. You also get the engagement process. You can see the value going up, but like I say, don't worry about that because we'll knock that down at the end. So the engagement process is about lessons. This is where you have all the various activities and strategies for getting kids really lighting up about your lessons. This is where they leave at the end of the lesson with a smile on their face, and they line up the next day with a huge smile on their face, eager to come back in because they've had fun. It's not just about entertaining them, though, because that's not learning, is it? It's about making sure that the work is appropriately challenging so that they're not put off by it because it's either too boring or too difficult for them. It's the Goldilocks principle. It's just right. And from there, once they've experienced that sense of success and achievement, for many of these kids, that's where you've really grabbed them. You know, a lot of these kids have never experienced that, or not for a very long time. So if you can be the teacher who gives them that light bulb moment for themselves, you've got them in the palm of your hand. So there's a lot of things about making work relevant to them. Ways that you can make any topic or task a little bit more relevant so that they're actually involved, wanting to be involved in it. You get instant buy-in. Ways to consolidate learning so that they actually leave a lesson feeling they've learned something. Ways to twist your questions so that you can get really disinterested or uninterested students willingly becoming involved. So there's no coercion, there's no bribing, there's no forcing, none of that. You want your kids actually wanting to learn, and that's what these type of activities can do. You also get the relationship process. Now, this is what I kind of focus on in my training, which is how to build relationships with kids. When I go into schools, a lot of my training is on this. Basically, I feel this makes such a big difference. You know, you got the relationship there, everything else can build on that. We cover about the attitude in this. Remember, I said your secret weapon. So this is where we cover how to develop that attitude, the things you can concentrate on to build relationships fast. I've covered them, those 2 things, how to show students you care about them and how to communicate frequently with them. But you need strategies for doing those things. You need ideas for doing that, particularly with students who are really hard to reach. And what about those students who don't want to speak with you and don't want to communicate with you? Well, I've got ways of striking up conversations with them even when they don't want to speak with you. It's neat ways that you can get them to suddenly speak with you. They're not even aware what you're doing, but before they know it, they're having a full-blown conversation because they actually want to. They're interested. So lots of ideas on not just building one-to-one relationships, but building class community and bonds between your students as well. So peer relationships. Little quote there from one of the ladies I was running a training in Singapore years ago. I want you to know that you've changed the lives of 40 of my students. She was particularly impressed by the section on relationships. It wasn't a big thing for them in their schools, but they've made that much more important in line with their teaching. You also get the response process. We're up to £268 value now, by the way, which is probably the bit that most people are looking for when they talk about classroom management. How do I deal with the behaviour? Well, these are all the strategies, but of course, as I've said, you've got to have all the other stuff going on in the background. You need the attitude in place, the relationship in place. You need to have all those preventative strategies in place, and then all this stuff really, really works. But I'll tell you one of the best bits about this. It's not taught on any other program that I run, and believe me, I've sat in on a lot of training, both when I was learning the craft myself and since then, because I've worked for a lot of companies. Nobody teaches this, and it's the most important thing. It's how you remain totally calm in difficult confrontational situations. So I've got a unique system for that because I actually teach meditation. I've been teaching meditation for the last 9 years. Now, it's not meditation per se, but there are some really clever techniques you can use to help you keep calm in difficult and confrontational situations. And they form a key part of what I call the response process. So this is so that you're not reacting off the cuff, firing from the hip, emotional reactions and outbursts. You are calmly responding in a considered and measured way. That is what makes all the difference in terms of dealing with behavior. So we are now up to, I don't know what we're up to because I've lost that bit. But anyway, why does this work? Well, the reason is because it's push button simple. What I've got for you here is at the end of all those conflicting bits of advice that I told you about at the start. You know, it's a bit here and a bit there. There's no system, but I've put it into a system for you. So it's 4 simple steps, 4 processes in this reliable system. Each one is about 90 minutes of recorded video. And as I've said, you get lots of bonuses with them and printables and books and things with all the strategies that you need. But there's a few bonuses too. We're up to £335 value now, I hope you realise. Bonus 1 is Zen productivity and time management. This is all about one of your most important aspects of teaching, which is saving time, because I know and you know that time is in short supply when you're a teacher. You only have so many hours in the day. And if you can just save a little bit of time, that's not going to just benefit your teaching, it's going to benefit your whole life. Now, I've ran this program for the last year or so to a lot of people now, and I get a lot of feedback about this. A lot of this comes from my training in mindfulness and meditation, but it was actually when I was refurbishing my late father's house after he had my way of working is, and how I've got numerous projects on the go, and they never seem to get finished. And it suddenly hit me as I was mixing some cement, how you can just focus much more easily. And it just popped in, I think probably because of all the mindfulness training, like I say. But from that moment, I thought, I've got to write this down. I've got to give it to people, because it's a way of becoming super organized and super focused and making sure that you get much more done in much less time. So that's going to save you a load of time. You also get the ADHD resource pack, which was an interview I did with a good friend of mine who's one of the experts on ADHD in the UK. So we are now up to, where are we at, £450 nearly. The Classroom Management Expert Pack, which is a series of 5 video presentations with various experts from around the world on classroom management. Lots of good stuff in there. So all that, you also get the Needs Focused Online Support Group, which is a private Facebook group, which is coming as part of my new website, which I have to say isn't actually there yet, but you'll get it for life. And when it is, it's like a peer support program, which I'll be in on now and again, giving bits and bobs of advice and answering questions and things. So that's probably, in honesty, one of the most important and helpful parts of the whole package, in that I will be charging a monthly fee for that when it's eventually set up, but you get access for free forever. And that is not just peer support, but I'll be on there as well. So the total value is about £600, nearly $800. Got a quick question for you. If all it did was enable you to reduce behavior problems by, say, half every day for the rest of your career, would it be worth it? Yes, 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 yes. Okay, and if I told you that it's actually probably going to only cost you about the price of a cup of coffee every day for a few months, that's got to be worth it, hasn't it? If just the time management bit saved you 5 hours a week, wouldn't that be worth it? Price of a cup of coffee for a few months? Save you all that stress. I've got lots of yeses coming in now, which is nice. So that's the price that people paid through my website for each individual product. And I had two choices regarding this with the price. I wanted to make it as affordable as I could for you, but I also wanted to give you as many resources as possible. So I feel with the price, I've reached a happy medium where you get really good value and obviously I still get paid. So hopefully you can see the value in it, but the real value is in what it can do for you. Because even at the full price for each of these products, I've had hundreds of teachers, well, thousands of teachers thrilled with the value and the results they've received. But because we've spent time together today and you've shown you're really committed, like I say, I want to give you it for just that. And that will give you immediate access to all the resources. So at this point, you've got two choices. You can obviously carry on trying to work everything out on your own, which for most teachers takes years. And many of those years are spent in that drained, stressed out state. For the price of a cup of coffee every day for the next couple of months, you can take the shortcut to fewer behaviour problems, more respect, better relationships, and having your students follow your instructions. Basically, being less stressed and saving time and enjoying your working day. Now, I want you to know that the risk is mine. You don't have to risk anything. If for any reason you buy the package and over the next 30 days you decide you don't want to keep it, then you have a complete refund back to you. All you need to do is delete the files from your computer and get in touch, because I think it's not fair to those who pay for the product and keep it that other people are getting the money back and then keeping the product. So I do ask that people delete the files. I seldom check. Sometimes if people have made a really big order, I will check, but I seldom check. I just do it on a trust basis. But I stand by all refunds. You would have your money back straight away if you weren't happy with it in any way. So the risk is mine, not yours. I have a very low refund rate over the last 10 years that I've been doing this. But like I say, I would stand by it. So let me tell you once more what you're going to get, and then I'll give you the link so that you can access everything right now. You get the prevention process, engagement process, relationship process, response process. You get all those bonuses, and the price you pay is just £77. But for those of you that are on the call, those of you that take action right now and buy it while you're on the call, I'm going to throw in one more bonus, and that is the take control of the Noisy Class original videos. When it was early on in the business, I recorded a series of about 8 webinars that were the basis of what has become my best-selling book, Take Control of the Noisy Class. These are those original videos. In some ways, they're quite funny looking back on them, because I was quite green in terms of putting all the stuff together then. But there's some of my best content on there as well. You know, this is really original stuff when I hadn't long been out of school, so a lot of it was really fresh. So you get that as well if you take action on the call. Da-ding, there is the link. That's all you need. Go to that address. I'm going to go to Q&A in a moment and start answering questions for people, but I'll leave this link up while I do. So it is, make sure you put the www in, www.tinyurl.com/lowercase y for RLE87X. Now, the reason why I've put that URL there is because the original URL was huge. It was really, really long. So I put it into a program called TinyURL and it cut it down to that. So if you just type that, actually, I could try and put it in the chat box, actually, can't I? Let's do that. See if that works. See if I can get that from there. This is Rob Technoklutz trying to do something he's never done before. Copy. I put that there. Let's see if it works. There you go. There's the link. If you want to just click it, that should take you direct to the website, the shopping cart. So if you have any problems at any time, most of you I think will have been to my site and you'll know that you can get in touch via our help desk, which is needsfocusedteaching.com/help desk. I tend to send people there rather than emails because I get so many emails, as I was saying to someone earlier. But if you have to get in touch by email, it's very much the secondary choice. It's rob@liferaftmedia.com. rob@liferaftmedia.com. So yeah, help desk, needsfocusedteaching.com /help desk. If you go to my website, the help desk address is all over the website. You'll find it somewhere, and it's probably at the bottom of the shopping cart as well. But anyway, I hope everything has been useful for you. I like to give as much value as I possibly can in terms of products that I sell, and indeed in terms of these free sessions. So I hope you got a lot of value out of it. I like to help people as much as I possibly can. I also hope that you want to join me and get the program and become more involved, because the more people who are using this change in attitude and approach, the more we help kids, the more we make a difference, the easier time we have. I've dripped in quite a little bit of stuff about mindfulness in my trainings now. There's a lot of change in attitude, and how you can deal with some emotional issues you might have as a result of teaching difficult kids. It can create quite a lot of frustration, a lot of anger sometimes, a feeling of inadequacy, of failure, and being able to deal with those things is of paramount importance, not just for your own health and sanity, but also for your ability to continue working, for your professional career. So I drip some of that into my products now. There's certainly some of that in the Zen productivity program, which you get as part of this. And if you buy the products and you're more in touch with us, then I can help you with other areas like that, because that is the main area of my business now, is self-development. So how long will it be at that price? I'm starting to answer questions now. So Kirsty says, how long will it be at that price? Kirsty, I don't know is the honest answer. I've got my hand on my heart here. I don't know. Sometimes I shut these down immediately afterwards because I'm absolutely shattered. This is a late one for me. It's 11:20 now, and I'm absolutely tired out. Sometimes I leave them running overnight. I'll probably leave this running overnight. And then I normally do a countdown for a couple of days, and try and sweep up for everyone and just say, if you missed it, here's the link and you can get it. I don't always do that. Sometimes it just shuts down after a day or two. Sometimes I'll do a 4-day sale on it, a 4-day promotion. So the honest answer is I don't know. My advice is, and it's honest advice, I mean, it's up to you, but if you've got it now, get it now, because I will start trimming bonuses out and things. Okay, Suzanne says, hi Rob, please, in those packages are just recordings or also ebooks? Yes, there are ebooks. Sorry, I didn't really explain the bonuses, but I've got about 8 books on Amazon now, and a few of them are bestsellers, and I've put at least 3 of them in those programs as bonuses. I think the engagement process has 2 ebooks with it, one of them on cooperative learning and active learning. It's got loads and loads of activities and games and starters and things that you can put in, and the other one is actually starters and plenaries. Both of them are on Amazon. You can buy them, or you can just get them as part of this. I mean, really, when you consider what you're getting, it's the price of, say, I don't know, 5 books or whatever, but you're getting all this other stuff as well. Can we get this recording to view again? Not yet. Is it Chris Gilchrist? No, I'm not going to put it out as a recording as such. I'll probably do one more rerun like this before the end of this week. My wife's going on retreat for 3 days tomorrow. I'm left doing daddy daycare, but if I get a chance, I might do another rerun before the weekend's out. If not, what I am going to do is I'm going to start doing an online instantly available webinar. So one of the recordings will go up as an instantly available webinar, but it's probably going to take me a few weeks to get that done, to be quite honest. Jessica says, I just bought the 4 packs last weekend, but I didn't get the bonus materials. Jessica, you're right. You bought that without it being the VIP pack because you weren't on the call, so it didn't have the bonuses. But yes, I can send you the bonuses. Of course I can. If you please get in touch with me via the help desk, Jessica, and just mention this call and what I've said, and just remind me, and I'll give you access to the bonuses. Of course, not a problem at all. I value your custom. My pleasure. King says, thank you very much for this evening. I already have many of your resources, which I find very useful. Thank you so much. I love especially the mindfulness materials, which I'm still working through. Good on you. And thank you very much. Good night. Lovely. I'm going to call you Chris Gilchrist because there's only the surname there and there's a C. So I hope I got that right. I'm sorry if I got it wrong. How do I put all those routines on the wall? I don't have much space where we can put resources up. Yes. Okay. And it was you that asked about detention. Okay. So a couple of big questions there. I'm going to come back to the detention one if I've got time at the end, because I've got loads of questions to get through. But I'll tell you about the routines, and that basically you just pick the most important ones and either put 3 or 4 of the most important ones up and have them perhaps do the other ones in their books, or rotate them so that you haven't always got the same ones up there. You see, with routines, you only want to do one at a time anyway. If you hit them with 5 or 6 routines, it gets very confusing. I made this mistake when I first started doing this. I was working for a college, and I had them do about 10 routines at once. And I called back about 2 months later. It hadn't made an iota of difference. Everyone was so confused. So we went back to doing 1 routine at a time, and within one week or even a few days, it was all transformed. It made a huge difference. So just do 1 at a time. And then when you get to 3 or 4, you can rotate them or have them put them in their books. And it's also good if you get them involved in creating the routines, so that they don't just feel like, automatons or robots that are having to follow instructions that they haven't got any ownership of. Christina says, I have almost all your books and I am so grateful. Thank you so much. I am grateful to all my customers. You would not believe how grateful I am, because you support me in my life, and also the feedback I get is just wonderful. So thank you. Suzanne, please, is this program suitable for specialist teachers dealing with many students just for a few minutes? Suzanne, look, I tell you what, believe me when I say this, if you try it and it's not for you, you will get your money back. But I would put my hand on heart and say there will almost certainly be a lot of stuff in there that you will find very useful. There is so much information in there, but don't worry, it's not information overload either. It's very systematically explained, but you will get something. Yeah, absolutely, it's going to be useful for you. Galaxy says, I know it's not your name, Galaxy S8. Can I log in after I purchase the materials? Yeah, you get immediate access. You're straight into it. And if you have any problem, just needsfocusedteaching.com/helpdesk, and either myself or someone else will help you. Let me try and get through these questions. We've got lots of them. Luna, thank you. Just bought it. Thank you so much. Kevin, let me get this right. So I still wonder if threats and consequences are helpful. Children under stress are more likely to act up. I like the relational approach, but I wonder how justifiable adult-imposed consequences can be. I'm not too sure if you're pro threat there or against it, but threat is never a good word, is it? Threats of punishment, it just doesn't even sound nice. It certainly doesn't feel nice if you're being threatened and punished. Now, threats can do a lot of harm, more harm than good, particularly if there's nothing comes after them. It's just threaten, 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 warning, warning, warning. And if it's not followed up, then you actually lose a lot of face with your students, and it becomes harder and harder to get them to follow your instructions. So forget threats. We have 1 warning or a finite number of warnings. In some cases, we'll give 2 or 3 warnings, depending on the type of group that you're working with. But with a really tough group, you give 1 warning, and then they know that you immediately after that move to a consequence. Now, that consequence doesn't have to be anything really, really nasty. In fact, it never should be. It should just be inconvenient rather than harmful in any way. So it's an inconvenient consequence. Normally, we take away some time from them. But there are ways of putting together logical consequences too. So whatever they're doing wrong tends to have a logical consequence that follows it. So for example, if they're writing on the desk, they would spend their break time cleaning the desk. If they are swinging around on their chair, it would be logical to me to say, look, if you can't sit still on your chair, I'll take your chair away and you can stand up for 10 minutes. So the logical consequence follows the behavior. But I would stay away from threats in all circumstances. Give them a warning and then a consequence. And yeah, you need consequences. You need boundaries. If kids haven't got boundaries and consequences, then we can't expect them to stick within reasonable realms of behavior. You need those boundaries. It's just the way you apply them that makes all the difference. Galaxy SA, after I purchased, I got out the window by mistake. Is there a way to get back in? So send me an email and I'll sort this out before I go to bed. Rob@liferaftmedia.com, or on the help desk, needs focused teaching .com/help desk. And if you can't get the link to the product, I'll sort that out for you. I'll send you that. Bia says, thank you very much. I really enjoyed it and hope there will be more of these sessions. There will indeed. I'm getting back into this. I had a long period where I burned out completely. I was very, very ill. But fortunately, as a result of a lot of deep self-work and some very, very, very weird healers and what have you that I've been working with over the years, man, I've done some weird stuff. I'm now getting back on form. So yeah, there will be more. Luna says, I'm going to pop off. Best to you. Thank you so much for offering your insights at such a reasonable price. Thank you, Luna. I really appreciate that, and I appreciate your business. Thank you. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do now. I'm going to give a countdown from 10 to 0. And if I get to 0 and you haven't got your question in, then I will be clicking off. So thank you so much for all your responses, for your questions, for taking part, for giving up your time, because I know for many of you, these are unearthly hours of the morning or night. So thank you so much for your commitment in that regard. I hope you appreciate, that's why I do this stuff, because it feels good to me to be helping people and to be getting this kind of commitment and feedback, and also obviously making my living doing this. So thank you so much for being here. And I would like to do these again and see, we'll do some different ones and get people on, and maybe even open the microphones up as we get more into it. But thank you so much for joining. And I'll hopefully see you all again, not too far away. Oh, Dee's asked a question just before I even got to the countdown. Unfortunately, missed most of this. That is unfortunate, actually, Dee. Do I get a copy of the slides? In a word, no, because you may have missed the bit where I said I'm going to do a rerun in a couple of days, probably. I'm not certain about it, but as long as I get time. My wife's away, I'm with the kids, and I might not get time. But if I do, I will do a rerun. I will be recording that one, and one of the recordings will go into an instantly available webinar that people can access at any time, because I think that's a lot easier for people. So rather than me giving up my time live at silly hours, because it's now nearly midnight, and other people having to get up at stupid hours, I'll just make it instantly available. That's the way I'm going to do it. So no, I'm not giving the slides away, but I will do another one. Any more questions? So 10. Thank you, Kathy. 9, 8. Kevin's in there. Thanks, Rob. Interesting evening. Is a warning, not a threat? I don't know. You tell me. You tell me, Kevin. Is a warning a threat? It's the very word threat to me. Just doesn't sound nice. Boundaries and consequences are different things. I find with positive relationships, there are rarely behavior problems. Teacher-imposed consequences tend to damage relationships. Oh, no, I disagree. If you give consequences in the right way, you can actually build relationships with kids. You see, a teacher who gives a threat and then a punishment, they break relationships without doubt. But a teacher who gives a logical consequence in a firm and fair manner, you can actually gain respect from your students. So, for example, and I'll answer your question now about detentions. If I have a student who's talking through the lesson and I don't manage that talking properly, and I get really wound up about it, and then I just blow up towards the end of the lesson and say, right, you've got a 2-hour detention. All right, you're in detention. And there was no management of that problem throughout the lesson. I just got more and more wound up until the point I just exploded. Whereas I could have solved it by doing one of those hierarchies that I told you about, moving the student for a little while. That's how you gain respect, because you treat them fairly. You don't just explode and give them a huge consequence, a huge punishment, like an hour's detention for what is just a bit of chatter. Well, some of you might say, it's not a bit of chatter because it goes on the whole lesson. It only goes on the whole lesson if you don't manage it properly. So if I have a hierarchy of consequences and I say, right, if it carries on talking in the next 5 minutes, you're moving to the front, you're sitting there for 10 minutes with a timer on, then I gain respect. And if that goes from there, it carries on talking, I go to the next level of consequence. Now, if I do it like that, I gain respect from the students. They start to trust me more and they see me as fair. So imposed consequences in that way can actually build relationships. You might be the only teacher who actually lands consequences in a fair, logical manner. Everybody else just explodes. So believe me. And also, if you consider that when a student is wound up or when they're doing something wrong, they're quite emotional. If you can be the one who can treat them fairly at that moment, that is the very best time to connect with someone. when they're in an emotional state. If you can be the one who deals with them in a fair, considerate, supportive, caring manner, they will notice that and they will respond to that. So the question about detentions, the alternative, I go into this in great detail in the response process, but basically, rather than thinking of, right, detention is the blanket solution here, be a little bit more creative than that. You know, to make it inconvenient for them, all you need to do is keep them back for 2 minutes after the lesson. And if you just keep them back for 2 minutes, you're not going to impose on anyone else's lesson because they can still get there on time. You're not going to keep them back from a bus or a taxi, so you don't have to give any notification to senior staff or to parents. You don't have to get permission. It's basically 2 minutes. And once you get into the habit of doing this, the kids respect you for it and they will turn up for that 2 minutes. And all you do during that 2 minutes is you just explain why you can't have them doing whatever they were doing, and you ask them how they can put it right. So you're dealing with it in a very fair, considerate manner. That's where the respect comes from. Hour-long detentions don't work. If they did, we wouldn't be here now. Think creatively. A 2-minute detention, I call it a 2-minute detention or a 5-minute detention or a 10-minute detention in rare circumstances. But 2 minutes is all you need to hold them back. That's inconvenient. They don't get to go off with their friends. But it enables you to at least address the problem. And they respect you for the fact that you're doing it fairly rather than over the top. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. I am now going to get off. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lovely. Thank you so much, everyone. No more questions. Thank you, all of you. And I will see you again. Thanks for taking part. And loads of purchases. Thank you so much. Really kind. Thank you.